That's why we come back to the game, for that feeling when it was so pure and we were out of our own way. The club was swinging itself. And that's the best feeling ever. And when we have that feeling, why not say, you know what? I'm going to prepare myself for this golf shot. I'm going to pick a workable target. I'm going to pick a club that I trust, and I'm going to let the club swing itself. And my goal is to have this shot feel as good as it can possibly feel. And if it does, usually those are very high quality shots. There's a pretty close correlation between how good it feels coming off the club face and it going pretty much the way you want it to go. Not perfect, but a pretty high correlation. So instead of thinking so much about your score and worrying about where the bad places you want to avoid are, why don't you say, you know what, my goal is just like when I was a beginner. I want to hit as many shots as I can that feel really good.
Golf Smarter, number 799. This week's episodes of Golf Smarter and Golf Smarter Mulligans are brought to you by dynamicgolfers.com/golfsmarter. Get a 7-day free trial and 15% off your membership with checkout code GolfSmarter. The challenge of dancing with the golf course. It's new every time you play with Dr. Joe Parent.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Dr. Joe.
Hi, Fred. Great to be here.
It is so wonderful to have you on to help us celebrate episode 800 coming up next week. But I had to do 799. I had to have you on since you were episode number 1. And to this day, I'm still quoting you from all the episodes we've done together, mostly in the hundreds. When we hit double zeros, you're on. But I just wouldn't be doing a service to the audience or to myself if I didn't bring you back for one more time.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I love chatting with you about everything golf and life.
Awesome.
And life.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, it's all tied together. And last time you were on, I just checked. It's like, my goodness, it was way pre-COVID. It was in April of 2019. Episode 684, I think you were talking about A Walk in the Wood.
Yes, yeah? That's right.
Yeah, the book you did with your sister, right?
Yeah, and my wife, because they both worked for Disney, and my sister writing and editing children's stories, and my wife designing. She's a graphic designer, designing the interiors and the book covers. So they asked my sister to invite me to co-write the book with her on, it's A Walk in the Wood, Meditations on Mindfulness with a Bear Named Pooh. And then they assigned my wife to design the interior and the cover. And we get as many comments on the feel and the texture and the look of the book as we do on the content. So I'm really proud of that.
You should be. It's wonderful. And I think that is Zen Tennis. Is that new? Or is Walk in the Wood the last one?
That's the last one. Zen Tennis came out in 2015, along with the Best Diet Book Ever. Came out that year.
That I remember.
And Zen Tennis, I wrote with a gentleman named Bill Scanlon, who was famous for upsetting John McEnroe. He upset him score-wise, and he upset him a lot on the tennis court. In 1983, when he was ranked number 1 and the favorite to win the U.S. Open. And Bill got in the zone, and the book is Zen Tennis Playing in the Zone. And sadly, Bill passed away just a month ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, a young man, but he got cancer, the big C, and they thought they had it under control, and it had spread. And it's for some people, they can go for a long time. Others, they're gone pretty quickly. So to the extent that minimized his suffering. That was good. The
Yes.
sadness that it leaves with all of us is sad. And, all I can do, and this is kind of traditional that you say, well, may my sadness include all the sadness in the world, so that, it kind of like, well, if I've got to be unhappy, let me include others' unhappiness in that so they don't have to suffer so much. And if you think about how much suffering the world has gone through with this pandemic, that's something you can do. So that's what I've been doing.
Yeah. Well, may his memory be a blessing.
Mm-hmm. So those three were my post golf books. The last golf book I did was actually How to Make Every Putt. We were just talking about that recently, the difference between making and holing a putt, which goes way back to Zen Golf nearly 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That
probably part of our first conversation.
I think so. And as you said, you were just the other day playing golf with somebody and said, well, you made that putt, you just didn't hole it. And that's really, it changes the whole perspective on things of what we can accomplish and what's under our control and what isn't, and not beating our heads against the wall for what isn't, but working with it and kind of dancing with the golf course, taking what it gives you, knowing when you can go for it and when you have to lay back.
I just love that you just said dancing with the golf course. I think that's the name of this episode. That is really a beautiful thought, because it is a dance with a new partner almost every time, no matter if you play a different course or the same one. You're dancing with a different partner.
I just got off a lesson with a gentleman who I've been working with for just the last few months, and he said he's had his last 5 rounds, he shot under par, and he hadn't done that all year the year before. So we talked about that, and he's playing in some qualifiers for state amateur championships and things like that, and state opens. And what we talked about was he sometimes would go low and then say, okay, let's not give any back. And sometimes he'd say, I get excited and I try to do too much. So I said, well, part of the whole thing is dancing with the golf course and knowing where the give and take is. And that kind of, because he talked about, well, the courses he's going to play are so much fun. They're real gems. I said, take delight in the experience and let go of your concern about the outcomes. He was saying, well, there are 144 in the field, and they're taking the top 9 and then 2 alternates. And then this other one, there's 120 in the field, and they're taking 40% is the cut. And then we go back again. I said, so do you know what an Etch-a-Sketch is? And he said, yeah, you shake it and erase it. And we were on a video call, and that I do, I've been doing video calls for a long, long time. And so during the pandemic, when we really couldn't be with people in person, it didn't change that much for me as far as how many video calls I was doing. But I started, people started really feeling like, hey, this is my personal contact. So on the call, I said, what I want you to do is shake your head and Etch-a-Sketch all those thoughts of cut lines and how many they're taking and all that. Just shake it right out of there and say, I'm going to dance with the golf course. I'm going to take what it'll give me. I'm going to respect it where I need to respect it. And I'm going to get the most out of my game against the golf course. And my goal, I said, I want you to say your goal is that I didn't leave anything out there, that I got everything I could out of my game and I didn't get in my own way. And that's really, we've talked about this for 20 years. That's really what my message is. And that is helping people get out of their own way so that they can get the most out of their abilities, whether it's on the golf course or business consulting or life coaching, whatever it is, it's about getting out of your own way, because we all have so much talent that we interfere with really shining and coming out. Clear the clouds out of the way and let the sun shine through.
A beautiful place to take a break. Oh, heaven, just let's sit on that for a minute. We'll be right back. This episode of Golf Smarter is brought to you by dynamicgolfers.com. So I'm 60 days into my stretching and mobility 15 to 20 minute daily video sessions using the app from dynamicgolfers.com, and I can honestly report that I'm feeling more fluid, stronger, and in less pain than I've been in a long time, especially after walking 18 holes. But there's more to Dynamic Golfers that I'd like to share with you. In their library of workouts, everything is based on the daily stretching and mobility program, which I've been doing, like I said, for about 60 days now. I've done 60 times. But over the next few weeks, I'm going to introduce you to other programs they're offering because you may have other needs that will serve you better. This week, we'll talk about something that may have a lot of appeal for golfers of any skill level, and that's golfer strength training, which you do 3 times each week in conjunction with the daily mobility program. So you get longer and more effective workouts 3 times a week. Beginner is a 1-month stretch program of 12 sessions. Intermediate offers a 3-month strength training program that's designed to build upon the base you've developed with the 1-month program. And then there's the advanced 3-month program that includes whole body routine, upper body routine, core and stability routine, and continues from there. Now, recently I received an email that reported that dynamicgolfers.com/golfsmarter wasn't working, but that's been fixed and updated. So for only $9.99 a month, join golfers worldwide that make Dynamic Golfers part of their daily routine. Go to dynamicgolfers.com/golfsmarter now to get a 7-day free trial and 15% off your membership when you check out using the coupon code GolfSmarter. Check them out today and let me know what you think. And do it now because this exclusive discount offer for our Golf Martyrs won't last forever. dynamicgolfers.com/golfsmarter and use the checkout code GolfSmarter when you sign up today. This is really one of my all-time favorite sponsors we've had on Golf Smarter because it provides significant benefit for all golfers, no matter your skill level. And it's basically for the price of a sleeve of balls, if not less. And even if you only play once per month, you're probably going through a sleeve, if not more. Again, that's dynamicgolfers.com/golfsmarter. And remember, to get the discount, enter Golf Smarter at checkout. Okay, the Etch-a-Sketch thing, perfect. I needed, that's the kind of thing that all I ever remember from episode 1 always and every episode is I help people get out of their own way. And when I was starting to do this, I was fairly new to golf when I started doing this podcast, but I had read your book and was so moved by it that when I got the idea for the podcast and somebody recommended, a friend of mine who was in radio and is already doing podcasting, although this was very, very early in the game of podcasting. And I said, how do you get one started? He goes, find somebody who's got a well-known name. And I had just read the book and I was like, oh, I'm just going to reach out to Dr. Joseph Parent and see what happens. And you were so gracious about coming on and helping me launch this show. And it's interesting because at that time, the word mindfulness was not being used the way it is today.
Not in any way was it as pervasive as it is today.
Not at all.
I just did a mindfulness session for a group of camp counselors in their 20s. I think there were about 40 of them. And I said, raise your hand if you've never heard the word mindfulness. And nobody raised their hand.
No.
I went, wow, that is amazing. Because when I was in my 20s, I was one of the few who was practicing that.
Absolutely. And, and that's why Golf Smarter, to me, the name Golf Smarter worked so well. Although when I tell people, yeah, I do this podcast called Golf Smarter, they go, okay, I'll look it up. Smarter Golf, right? It's like, no, That's a very different thing than Golf Smarter. At least it is to me. And so I have to fight that. But it's like, oh, is that what really people think the name of this show? Oh boy. All right. Well, but,
They'll find you. They'll find you either way.
I hope so. Because I want them to find you. So when I first started doing the podcast, and I'd help people get out of their own way, never, you made the putt, you just didn't hole it. Things like that were really interesting concepts to me, and I bought into them wholeheartedly. But over the years of doing this and playing a lot more golf and really becoming obsessed with the game, as so many people do, some of that stuff started falling by the wayside because I started worrying about the outcome. I started getting caught up in the outcome. I started getting into a place where it was like, no, I'm better than this. Why do I keep doing that? And I always need this reminder.
That really connects back to the opening chapter of Zen Golf, which is about beginner's mind. And it's a saying from Suzuki Roshi, the great Zen master. It's bizarre to say this, but of the last century, which was my century, right? Of the last century. The 20th century. And he said, in the expert's mind, in the beginner's mind, there are infinite possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. So when we become experts, we always see is what we're trying to accomplish, and not even experts. When we feel like, oh, now I know enough about the game that I should, and that's a terrible word, I should be playing better. I should be avoiding these mistakes. I should know what I'm doing. And then in psychology, we call that shoulding all over yourself. And so
it makes me laugh every time you say it.
So instead, the idea is to say, what if I go into this with beginner's mind? And it goes along with dancing and not knowing what's coming, but saying, what's going to give me the best chance to get my lowest score on this hole without putting myself in unnecessary risk or jeopardy? And when we do that, then we start to explore and investigate and get curious. Well, what if I did this? And what if I did that? And, I tell the story of a par 5 in Scotland. It was at St. Andrews. And I had a little course map. And I looked at it, and there were about 30 bunkers in my driving area. And it was past where I could hit it. And even if I hit a moderate one, I was still going to reach them. And then, so I hit a 4-iron off the tee on a par 5. And then the next shot, there in my 3-wood area, almost to the green, another 30 bunkers. So I hit another 4-iron. And then I hit a 9-iron onto the green. And luckily, I both made and hold a 15-foot putt. And I go, that was kind of easy. Why do we make things so hard for ourselves? Because we read on the scorecard, it says par 5, oh, pull the driver. Actually, no. That's one where you even have more options than most par 4s. So think outside the box in that way and see what the golf course is inviting you to do that's a little different.
Infinite possibilities on every golf course, on every shot, especially, oh God, the woulda, shoulda, coulda. That's another line from you, the woulda, shoulda, coulda. It just how people will, every time I'm on this hole, I do this. Then why do you keep doing that?
and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because then we get guidey and try to be careful, and that actually is in our own way. So what happens, what happened to you as far as beginner's mind goes, you started having some accomplishment, and then some ambition came in, and then what goes with ambition is hope and fear. because then before you go, hey, I'm going to go out and play, I wonder what's going to happen. I want to see how many good shots I can hit, because I'm just a beginner. And really all I want to do is hit a few more good shots and a few more than that. And then when you get to a certain point, you go, well, now I should hit lots of good shots. Why did I hit that bad one? Why did I hit that bad one? Oh, no. And you start getting so critical of yourself when, if you kept the same attitude, and this is what I've been teaching lately. Okay. There's this commercial called Callaway Better Than Sex. And I won't go into what it is, but you can imagine. And the idea is, those are, when you hit a great golf shot, oh my God, it feels so good. The other day, I was talking about a player with this, and he hit a shot and he goes, oh, that felt so good. I want to have a cigarette afterward. And so when we know, that's why we come back to the game, for that feeling when it was so pure, when we hit that shot and we were out of our own way. They even described it as the club was swinging itself. And that's the best feeling ever. And when we have that feeling, why not say, you know what? I'm going to prepare myself for this golf shot. I'm going to pick a workable target. I'm going to pick a club that I trust to get to that target. And I'm going to let the club swing itself. And my goal is to have this shot feel as good as it can possibly feel. And if it does, usually those are very high quality shots. There's a pretty close correlation between how good it feels coming off the club face and it going pretty much the way you want it to go. Not perfect, but a pretty high correlation. So instead of thinking so much about your score and worrying about so much about where the bad places you want to avoid are, why don't you say, you know what, my goal is just like when I was a beginner. I want to hit as many shots as I can that feel really good. And if you make that your goal, listen, that's what I just gave a lesson to a scratch golfer. He played his front nine that way, and then he got cautious on the back nine. He birdied 5 of his first 7 holes. And then he stopped playing for how many shots he could feel that he really loved. And he shot 2 over. He shot 3 over on the rest of the round. He still finished 2 under par. So he's a really good golfer. But he was grinding his way around the back nine, and he was dancing his way through the front nine. Just keep dancing.
It's so interesting because you get to a level where your game is, and there are the majority of golfers are going, God, I just wish I could get there once. I could just do that. And these guys, and then people, they're like, they're still not satisfied. No one's ever satisfied. Somebody asked me recently, are you a good golfer? I said, I'm not a good golfer. I don't know anybody who would ever say they're a good golfer, but I'm not bad. I thought that was a fair way to put it. I'm not good, but I'm not bad, And the thing that gets me, I don't know why I do this to myself, but I continue to do it. I have the most fun when I'm shooting in the 70s, which doesn't happen all the time. I'm mostly a low 80s shooter, but when I had it around in the 70s, it feels great. But then if I see my index going down and I notice that, I don't believe it. I'm like, well, I'm not that good. And then everything goes to hell.
Well, can I flip it a little bit for you, Fred?
Please, doctor. Okay. You're in session.
You have the most fun when you're shooting in the 70s. I'm going to flip that for you. You shoot in the 70s when you're having the most fun.
Yeah.
The score follows the fun. If writing down 78 is fun, if that's what gives you fun, just go write down numbers in the 70s all day long. If that's what's fun, is write down little numbers and have them total up in the 70s. But that's not what's fun. What's fun is hitting the shots that produce that score. Yeah. So if you flip it around, it's going to change everything. If you say, I shoot in the 70s when I'm having the most fun on the golf course. Oh, then what's my goal? To have more fun. And who doesn't want to have more fun? Are you in California?
Yes, I am.
I am in California. And we have a saying in California, nothing beats feeling good. So why not feel good when you're on the golf course, and then you'll feel good when you're totaling up on the scorecard. You don't wait until you total up on the scorecard to decide whether it felt good or not. That's what I'm trying to say. And then you look at your handicap index, and first of all, remember that's a little less than the average of your best 10 of your last 20. They're not even counting those higher 10 of the last 20. So your handicap, what it is it says this is your potential. It doesn't say this is what you should shoot. Please dispel that notion. Because whatever your handicap is, what they're saying is you will likely shoot 3 or 4 rounds above that for every round under it. That's how the calculation works. And if you start shooting more under it, they lower it on you, so that it always comes out that way. So instead, say, you know what? Ooh, this is showing that I have even more potential. And you know what? I've been having more fun on the golf course, and my handicap's going down. Let's use a little logic. Keep having more fun, and the handicap will keep coming down. Instead of saying, oh, now my handicap's low, I got to keep it from going up. That's like walking up to the tee shot and saying, I got to keep the ball from going into the left rough or the right rough. How well does that work for you when that's your swing thought? Not so well. Pick a spot in the fairway and say, let's send it there.
Okay, we'll send it there. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Haven't shared this with you for a couple weeks, but last week's episode of Radio Baseball Cards features Hall of Fame pitcher who starred for the Philadelphia Phillies through the 1950s and 60s, Robin Roberts.
Here's another Radio Baseball Card. Impressive from the start, Robin Roberts struck out Joe DiMaggio and Phil Rizzuto in his first spring training appearance. But unlike many of today's pitchers who analyze each hitter's weaknesses, Roberts had his own style.
I would get loose to start a ball game and go out and try to get them out, 3 outs and sit out. I was not a great planner. I never anticipated how to pitch to certain hitters until I'd thrown a pitch. I let that pitch determine what.
That's Radio Baseball Cards, hosted by another Hall of Fame pitcher, the late Don Drysdale. Each podcast is less than 2 minutes, and you'll hear amazing and amusing stories from the greatest baseball players of the 20th century. Subscribe to Radio Baseball Cards from your favorite podcast app. I just love when people step up to the tee and go, oh, I hit it in the water here. You know, I was telling myself, don't hit it in the water. Don't hit it in the water. And I always say, you know what you just told yourself, right? He goes, yeah, don't hit it in the water. I said, no, you said hit it in the water. Hit it in the water. If you just get rid of the don't, all of a sudden you're telling yourself hit it in the water, and that's what your focus is, right? It's like they're focused on that.
That is one of them. There's 2 possibilities.
Okay.
One is all you hear is, and it's not so much hearing as picturing a ball flying into the water and going splash, or hearing yourself say, hit it into the water. And then your system gets a little confused and thinks, oh, that's what we're supposed to do. The other thing is the only thing it hears is don't. It sees the water and hears don't. So I saw David Toms. I used to work with him, and he's now on the senior tour. And I ran into him. He says, Doc, I was just telling somebody a story about us, and it was from 10 years ago.
Mm.
It was in a pro-am, and I was working with him, and his amateur got up on the tee, and there was a lake on the right, and this guy hooked it off the golf course into the houses on the left. And I said, nice shot. And Dave said, what do you mean? I said, well, he did a great job of not hitting it in the lake. He hit it about as far. Good job. You know, it's the same thing when somebody hits it 20 feet, hits a 30-foot putt 20 feet by, and he said, I didn't want to leave it short. I said, you did an awesome job of not leaving it short. Right? He hit a 20 feet pass.
Yeah, but did he punch you?
And so, no,
I couldn't get away with that if I said that to someone. They'd punch me.
I'm very careful about who I say those things around. You know, so it really is the other thing that we do. If I tell you, you know, don't drive to a city that's due west of you, you're not gonna head northwest or southwest. You're gonna head east. And you're going to just head, if you don't know exactly where, you're just going to go as far from the place you want to avoid as you can go. And that's what golfers do. And they do a combination of helping it go where in the opposite direction and preventing it from going where they didn't want to go. And these are things I want to share with your listening audience. If you're looking for what gets in the way, there are three particular ways that we interfere with ourselves swinging the golf club. And they all have to do with outcome. The first is preventing. We don't want it, we pick a spot we don't want it to go, and we do everything we can to go in the opposite direction. And it usually doesn't turn out that well. The other is, if we don't trust that it's going to do what we do want it to do, we try to help it there. If we want it to draw, we really draw it, and then it hooks. If we don't trust that we're going to hit it far enough with this club, we swing like we're trying to hit a 450-yard home run. And that gets in the way of making our best swing. And so that's helping. There's preventing, and then there's basically just getting real guidey and saying, I need it to go straight. I need it to, and then we're wimpy and tentative and guidey, and it's all holding back. We're trying to swing. We're trying to play like we have our foot on the accelerator and the brake at the same time. So those are three things that interfere with us making a swing. So what I want to tell you to do is, look, give yourself room to play so you're not worried about avoiding something. Take plenty of clubs so you don't have to hit anything extra. And know where you'd rather be. If there's trouble over the green, take a short enough club and pre-accept chipping on. If there's trouble in front of the green, look at that back edge and say, I want to hit it to the back edge of the green. I'd rather have a long putt than have to drop the ball behind the lake. So plan it out that way that lets you free it up, lets you trust the swing, and then dance with it. Don't try to make it come out a particular way. If you try to make your partner dance a particular way, you don't have any fun. Make your swing and see what happens. And then have fun with it. That's going to be the most fun, when you can just make that swing and just see what happens rather than trying to manipulate it.
Oh, man, that's so powerful. Oh, you are such an inspiration, my friend. You're so good. And I know that a lot of people come back to these episodes to hear it again and again and be reminded, to have your voice in our heads. It just always blows my mind. I really appreciate that. Let's see. I was actually curious Zen Golf was your first book, correct?
Correct.
What prompted that?
Well, it's almost to its 20th anniversary.
Congratulations.
1 year away. Thank you. And we're in a 25th printing.
Wow.
And if you count hardcover, because we never made a paperback, it's always been in hardcover. We have made an ebook. I recorded the audiobook. You recognize the voice. There are foreign editions, about 10 of them. So all told, I think we're pretty close to 1 million copies.
Wow.
Which is pretty exciting. And if you think of how many times it's been read, then I know we're at 1 million copies, because I have a lot of people who told me they've read it 2, 3, or more times.
Sure.
And go back to it, because it's meant to be read that way. Each chapter stands on its own. The way that it came about was, again, through my sister, who works in the publishing industry, and she knew an agent who she was at a party with, and the agent overheard her telling somebody that her brother practices Buddhist meditation and he teaches golf. And she said, well, that's really interesting. Does he have a book? And my sister, being very clever, said he's working on one. Well, what I had told my sister was, I've written about half a dozen magazine articles, about 2 pages each. And when I've written enough of them, I'll try to slap them together into a book. So I had written 12 pages, and the agent said, I want to see your stuff. Wow. So I took some time and got out all my notes and transcripts of clinics I'd taught and wrote, maybe 30 more pages. She helped me craft a proposal, and one of the first companies she offered it to, Doubleday, the editor said, this is good stuff. Let's get it. Let's do it. And then I had to sit down and write it.
Without having a prompt, it's like, now what do I do?
Well, I had enough notes, and I knew that recently I ran into a company that has the initials TLDR. And I said, what do they stand for? He says, too long, didn't read. So that's why even 20 years ago, I knew to make all the chapters 2 to 3 pages. Because people will read a 2 to 3 page chapter. And I also didn't want it to be so that you had to read certain ones before you got to other ones and work your way through the book, because then you have to read the whole book. Now, what I did was I put standalone chapters. And that's what's in Zen Golf. There's a flow to it from front to back. I mean, obviously, I put the pre-shot routine in before I put the post-shot routine in. but within that flow, you can find what you're looking for and just go to that chapter. So I get a lot of people who say, I got a lot of tabs and dog ears on in my copy of the book.
Absolutely.
And it's pretty cool. They say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And it's pretty cool to see people talking about, the broadcasters on national TV, on golf telecasts, talking about the guy having Zen in his game. And people talking about mindfulness, and people talking about things that I introduced 20 years ago. It's pretty exciting and very gratifying. And thank you for helping to popularize it.
Oh, well, it's my honor. I know that I have stated to people, whether it's true or not, I like to believe it, that it is. And I've talked to a lot of mental game coaches in addition to you, but I think, and I could be wrong, but it's probably the most popular golf mental game book in history.
Well, thank you. I hope so.
That would be a nice thing. All right, Let's take another time out, and we'll come back and we'll talk about other books that you've done, because they're just as important. We'll be right back. This week on Golf Smarter Mulligans, we meet a teacher who is mentioned in last week's conversation with Sean the Beast Pfister, Eben Dennis, on his program Power Feel Golf.
I actually had a conversation with Jackie Burke a couple of weeks ago, and he still feels that golf is probably the most overtaught sport in the world. Back then, they were starting to see that it was being overtaught. And they didn't want it to go in that direction. They wanted to keep it simple, make it a fun and exciting game for people to go out and play. Jackie told me the other day, he said, most people today still look like they're chopping wood. And there's no reason for that. They don't need to be hitting at that ball. They need to learn how to swing a golf club. And the only way you learn how to swing a golf club is to, as Jimmy Demerit used to tell me, see it, feel it, and do it, and not get caught up in just trying to hit it.
That's Eben Dennis this week on episode 115 of Golf Smarter Mulligans, being released this Friday. Both Golf Smarter and Golf Smarter Mulligans are available from where you're listening to this podcast right now. Please subscribe and follow both so that you can get the brand new episode of either when it downloads to your favorite listening device. I think about young people who are recording artists and they make their first album and it becomes a hit. And then all of a sudden it's like, I got to come up with another one now. I've taken my whole life to write this one album or create this one album, but now I've got to come up with another album in a couple of months. And all of a sudden it's the pressure to do this. So what happened when you started seeing that Zen Golf was catching on and people were reading it and you were selling copies, and I'm sure the publisher was reminding you of how many copies were being purchased. What happened then? Where did you go from there, and what made you decide to go in that direction?
Well, I waited for some time because when I talked to the publisher, they said, let's not bring out any, we're on a roll here. Let's just keep marketing and publishing and promoting Zen Golf, and let us know when you're ready with something else. And what really connected, and it's so funny that when we were prepping for this session, you talked about you said that you had just played golf and my name came up, and that it often comes up with this friend of yours that you play with, because you always say when you roll a good putt, but it just doesn't go in the hole, I made that putt, I just didn't hole that putt. And that became the cornerstone for the second book, which was Zen Putting. As I did all my lessons, it really became clear that that's one of my specialties that was emerging. In addition to the overall psychology, it was about putting. And so the second book was Zen Putting, and that has instead of just one chapter called How to Make Every Putt, that has like 1/4 or 1/3 of the book, a whole section called How to Make Every Putt, which is, it's about how you get the ball rolling. I know that's an old expression, getting the ball rolling, but it is. That's you, and that's your only job. When I ask people in my lessons, I say, "What's your job in putting?" They say, "To put the ball in the hole." I said, "Well, are you allowed to pick it up and place it there?" They said, "No." "Are you allowed to put your putter right behind the ball and shovel it all the way in?" "No." I said, "Well, now you got me confused, because you said your job is to put the ball in the hole, but you're telling me you're not allowed to put the ball in the hole." Well, that's going to make anybody crazy. And that's why people have problems putting, because they don't understand their job. Their job is not to put the ball in the hole. Their job is to get the ball started and give the ball the best chance to find the hole. So that's making the putt. If you like the way it left your putter, the roll, the pace, the line, you made your putt. Then you see whether you hold the putt or not. So that was the second book, was Zen Putting. Then in the meantime, after that was a third book. I got approached by a young man who had purchased the rights to some illustrations. And they happened to be all of the drawings of Anthony Ravielli, the artist who illustrated the Hogan book.
Oh, wow.
Those incredible line drawings. And he said, "I want to pair these drawings with your teaching." We picked out 100 of the drawings, and I wrote 100 one-page tips. So the whole book is each chapter is a 2-page spread of a beautiful line drawing that's representative of a golf lesson, a 1-page golf lesson. So that's called Golf, the Art of the Mental Game, because it's an art book as much as an instructional book. And then a few years later, I got a request to update Zen putting. And that was, it had maybe even more of the Zen philosophy than Zen golf did. And they said, we want something streamlined that's just working on the putting stuff. And so we took Zen out of that title and made the whole book called How to Make Every Putt. The Secret to Winning Golf's Game Within the Game. So that was the latest golf book. But I am trying to gather all the teaching and lessons that I've done since those books came out and maybe do one probably final golf book that's got everything from practicing, from working with parents and juniors to be their best golf team as a family, to tee to green. And I do want it to be like Zen golf, to have life lessons as well as golf lessons. So right now, I'm open to a variety of publishers. Obviously, I'm going to go back to my original publisher, but the publishing world is so different now that I'm not sure that it's going to that they're going to want another book that's competes with Zen golf, because it's doing as well as it ever has, and I have so many. It's so gratifying. I can't tell you how many junior students I have who were not born when Zen golf was written, yet it's their go-to, basically, manual for the mental game.
Yeah, I played golf. I played golf last week with a kid who's like a 6 handicap from the Blues, and he's only 14 years old. And I'm like, I started doing the podcast before you were born. Oh my gosh. It's like, that's not right.
I get these cool Instagrams from all over the world of these kids. I got a cute one, this kid from France. And he's reading, he shows him under a post. I know it's France. It's either France or like maybe Morocco, because he's got a poster in French behind him. And he shows him reading Zen golf, and he says, "Not on my school reading list." I think he said, "Going deeper than my school reading list."
Wow.
And it was very sweet. I loved it. I love it.
And did you ever think that you were going to be anything other than a golf instructor? I mean, was the original plan? Because you have turned into obviously a prolific writer of very popular books.
Well, I wasn't planning on being a writer. I've always, for my adult life, I've been a teacher, and I love teaching. It turns out that I kind of knew from the reports that I'd done, and even since high school, that I was a good writer, but I'd never really put together that I was an author. That came to me out of my teaching. And I think that's why Zen golf has had its staying power, partly also because I made sure it was evergreen, and I didn't say in the 1996 Masters or the 2002 US Open or anything like that. It's not dated in that way. But I always knew that I could communicate, and that was the key. The key is that it came out of my teaching. I didn't write these theories and then start teaching them. I took my notes from lessons. So it's somewhat similar that way to Harvey Penick's Little Red Book. because he didn't even write that. His son gathered a shoebox full of his notes and worked with an author to put them into a book. And they're all little tiny chapters because they're all his lessons. And mine is very, very similar. It's all lessons I've done. It's so fun. I had somebody say, okay, I read Zen Golf. Now, were you in the bushes watching me play? Because this talks about just what I do. How do you know that? I know it because of the universals. I try to teach in universals, things that apply to most everybody. Nothing applies to every single person, but many things apply to lots of people. And so that's what I try to focus on in all of my work and all of my teaching. You know, for example, my game plan that I'm teaching people, to stay away from thinking about score, every hole is its own individual event. So at the start of each hole, plan out how you're going to play the hole, and all the way through that hole, just keep thinking, what's going to give me the best chance for my lowest score without taking an unnecessary risk? And play it every hole through that way. And then at the end of the hole, put your score down and then fresh start. Because, you know, there's something called karma, which is what you've done in the past affects what you're going to do in the future. Well, that exists after you tee off, because wherever you put that ball from the tee affects what you're going to be able to do with it after that, if you can find it. But once you've holed out, once you've finished the hole, it's ball in hand, and you have a fresh start. You can tee it up anywhere between those markers and play it to anywhere you want. So that's the game plan that takes the overall score out of the picture. It takes whatever you did on the last hole out of the picture. It takes however hard the hole you're playing is or the next few holes are. You don't get ahead of yourself. You don't drag the past along with you. You're just playing that hole now. And then within it, you play each shot that way. How do I play this shot to minimize to get the lowest strokes that I can on the hole without taking an unnecessary risk? And that works throughout the whole thing. Now, within that, what's going to allow you to do that? Give yourself room to play. Pick targets that give yourself room. Because if I tell you, I put a teacup in the middle of a big table, have you stand 20 feet away and give you a penny to toss, and I say it has to go in the cup or it's a bad throw, you're going to get pretty uptight. But if I say throw it toward the cup and anywhere it hits on the table is a good throw, you're going to relax. So if you give yourself room and accept a bigger area of outcomes, you're going to free up your swing. And that's what helps you get out of your own way and get the most out of your abilities.
And a beautiful place to just put it on pause right there. Oh, Dr. Joe, it is so great to see you again and to talk to you and to hear your lessons and, of course, be inspired by you. Thanks so much for all these years of your friendship and your lessons.
My pleasure. It's been a great friendship over the years. Let's keep going as long as we can until impermanence intervenes.
Dr. Joe wanted me to remind you that there are plenty of options to find him on the interwebs at zengolf.com and also drjoeparent.com. That's DRJOE Parent, Parent, drjoeparent.com. And on his YouTube channel, Dr. Joe Parent, he provides a playlist of guided mindfulness and compassion meditations and another playlist of Zen Golf Q&A. And obviously, if you check out the Amazon author page, make sure you look up Dr. Joseph Parent. So I received an email recently that the levels on an interview I did with Noah Polipsky were all over the map, which makes it really hard to listen to without constantly adjusting the volume. And I apologize for that. And I really appreciate the feedback. And you were right. They were off, but I fixed them. And if you want to go back and listen again, just make sure to download the new version, because once you've listened on your device, I don't know if it's going to auto-update or not. That would be episode 766, Peaceful Golf, A Journey into the Unknown with author and teacher Noah Polipsky. And if you hear something that's not up to our usual standards or quality, please let me know. So next week, we reach our milestone of episode 800, and then we can move on to 801. And even though I've shared this before, about our host on that show, since I will be interviewed, Matty B will not be joining us for the episode because of his incredibly busy travel schedule for the TV series he hosts, The Curse of Oak Island Drilling Down. So taking his place, which means we'll probably talk more about golf and the lessons learned on Golf Smarter, will be our Yoda of Yips, Jim Waldron. Now, what's so cool about this is that in 2013, I was on a golf trip up in Portland. I think I played Bandon Dunes and then came back to Portland. Jim and I went out to dinner for Thai food, and while we were having dinner, we recorded episode 400. This is going to be great. I'm very excited about this. Follow at Golf Smarter on social media, and please subscribe to Golf Smarter TV on YouTube for additional and different golf content. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, click on the Hey Fred button, and we're now accepting tips for services provided. Please show your support so that we can continue to provide weekly, helpful, and entertaining golf content. Your donation can be as much or as little as you'd like, and it can be a one-time offering, or you can even do it recurring. Click on Donate at golfsmarter.com.